Sing praise unto the Lord, my brothers and sisters. Exalt the numbness and falling away of flesh he deems fit, as he frees us from our sin. Cherish the pocks and grooves his divine fingers shape, for in thy carvings does he show the path to purgation. Pray that this affliction most sacred shall cleave unto thee, until thy soul is fit for heaven. Suffering is the Lord's most sage counsel. Indeed, did he not reserve it most fulsomely for his only Son? Lo, for blessed are we that should follow in his footsteps, with wholly crooked toes and lids unable to shield our eyes from the truth of his love. Prophet Salon, proclamations of his gift. Even a worm will turn. It is by the clamour of bells and hymns that they shall be heard. It is by the iron perfume of myrrh-soaked scabs, leaching up from brazen censers, that they shall be smelled. And it is by the heavy sprinting of sickly bodies, barely contained by yellowing bandages and the dance clatter of holy icons, that they shall be seen. But it is by their hands, locked in blessedly arthritic union around the throat of the heretic, that they shall be known. They are pain and piety. They are church and trench. They are lepers and pilgrims. Amassed as the baying throngs of the processions of the sacred affliction, the leper-pilgrims are the bloodied knuckles of Christendom, all too mortal bodies and minds reshaped over centuries in the crucible of the Great War. Communities of faithful refugees dispossessed by conflict, decreed sacred processions by papal bull, have official records dating back to the wars of Triclavianism in the 13th century. However, the first through procession of the sacred affliction coalesced at the onset of the Corpse Wars, led by the now revered and legendary Prophet Salon. Once the Prince of Decay Beelzebub unleashed the Black Grail across Europa, innumerable caravans of the sick and dying fled their festering homelands, and clogged the arteries of the continent's trade routes. Salon's flock, most grievously blighted with leprosy and the sickness that it cultivates thereafter, were one of the many to be denied passage through the townships due to the fear of spreading infection. Close to death and outraged by their fellow Christians' selfishness, the prophet sought martyrdom on behalf of his followers. To the procession's dismay, Salon and his fellow lepers shut themselves in a nearby tomb to perish, and called upon his flock to uncover and parade their remains through the town gates 7 days later to demonstrate the consequences of the town's refusal. However, when those 7 days passed and the tomb was opened, the prophet and his followers emerged hale, strong, and very much alive. They each praised God for the miraculous visit of the Blessed Mary, who bathed their flesh and bade them bear their afflictions as a gift. Each pockmark a sign, each lesion a lesson, that they might foster the strength of body and soul needed to defeat the forces of hell. Overcome by holy joy, the pilgrims immediately departed in all directions to spread the good news as far as their damaged legs would take them, while Salon himself travelled across North Africa, leaving behind many more processions in his wake. In the decades and centuries to come, the processions of the sacred affliction embraced Salon's miracle, not simply as a figurative sentiment of pain makes you stronger, but rather a command to mobilize and fulfill their destiny. They are to, quite literally, defeat the forces of hell through displays of zealous strength and fearlessness. Followers of the Lord from all corners of creation travel to join the raucous glory of the processions, often enamored by the message that whatever ailments they carry are a sign of God's love rather than a punishment. Perhaps most surprising to many is the warmth and readiness with which the processions accept would-be pilgrims. But then, each member of the procession remembers well the conditions that saw them seek their roving caravans, whether it be agonies of the flesh, mind, or reputation. While each procession boasts unique initiation rituals, all honour the rites of pure Tezareth. The rite begins with each aspirant confessing both sins and suffering to the Lazarus castigators. Once this first step is complete, the oft-weeping aspirant then walks through the assembled audience of the rest of the procession, with each pilgrim reaching out to them and offering words of comfort and community under God. Only when all in the procession have welcomed the aspirant does the walk end at the feet of the Lazarus prophet, who has taken this time to engrave the postulant's confessed sins into a millstone. The aspirant binds the millstone to their body, and the rites are completed with the gift of a virtue name, a new identity to herald their path to heaven as leper-pilgrims. Such intimacy with their fellow sufferers invariably leads to the spreading of some physical sickness. However, this is considered a small price to pay for unity and salvation. Rarely the wheel of fortune turns that this communal blend of afflictions blooms fully across a leper-pilgrim's body, with no part left untouched by the Lord's will. These fated souls are racked with such suffering that no means of mortal injury could compare, whether by blade or flame, and they are filled with the inviolable wrath of God. Unlike other pilgrim processions, there are truly no limits to the procession of the sacred affliction's forgiveness, provided one's commitment to redemption is true and unwavering. For those that do misstep, the Lazarist's loving nature grants the transgressor a final chance at atonement amongst the ranks of ecclesiastic prisoners. When a leper-pilgrim takes to the killing fields of no man's land, they are a vision of heavenly violence. The methods they choose to deliver the heretics unto the Lord can differ across processions. Many, such as the Inquisition-led Marian processions, choose to bathe the battlefield in fire from improvised flamethrowers and hurled Molotov cocktails before they dispatch smouldering survivors with bayonet or polearm. Others, such as the Holy Caravan of Saint Dunstan, take up smithing hammers and hefty flails forged with spiked bells, bludgeoning their foes ruthlessly and nailing their feet to the ground. Those that follow the wandering nightly warbands of Saint Lazarus pick up swords and shields in the tradition of their long-lasting allies. Irrespective of their weaponry, leper-pilgrims often favour elaborate assemblies of holy icons for armour over standard plate or mail. They believe the countenance of Blessed Mary and other patron saints is able to turn away ballistics designed to pierce even machined armour. More common still are those who eschew protection altogether, instead leaping across the trenches in simple ragged vestments, unhindered by unnecessary weight. The signature method of murder used across all processions of the Sacred Affliction comes in the form of their heavy millstone, which is removed from their bodies the only time one is permitted to do so, and tied around the necks of their bested foes. Many are the heretics who drowned in the mud beneath a millstone's weight, their last living moments filled by the ecstatic recounting of sins, warbled or barked through mouths full of hollowed rotten teeth and spittle-strewn bandages. Okie dokie, so a really fun lore video this week about the procession of the Sacred Affliction, one of the main antagonists in the upcoming Carcass Front. So we're getting to learn a lot more about them, which is nice. One of the things that we really need to be able to do in Trench Crusade as fans, basically, of the setting, is learn more about the inherent cultures and societies that exist within the world. And that's pretty much what we get to do this week, which is very nice and always enjoyable. We find out the origins of the procession of the Sacred Affliction, one of the most preeminent trench pilgrim processions in the game. So it says it starts with a prophet called Salon. Now, looking through history, I'm not saying this is definitively the same person or anything like that, but there's like, I like to know where the names come from. There is a Athenian statesman called Salon, who's known as apparently being like very wise, and he was considered the people's champion, which I find quite interesting as a tie-in to this, given Salon is willing to sacrifice himself to show the mistreatment of people, specifically those with leprosy who are suffering from that disease. So yeah, let's just do a quick little recap. There's certain things that I absolutely love in this lore piece. I love this line: cherish the pox and grooves his divine fingers shape. That tells us so much about the procession and what it is they think and why it is they think it, because they truly believe that this disease that they're suffering from, this leprosy, is a divine gift. In a way, it is God changing the thing that he created into a form that's essentially more suited to the world that now exists. Pray that this affliction most sacred shall cleave unto thee until thy soul is fit for heaven. So this is perceived as an experience that must be endured in order to get right with Jesus and make your way into heaven. Now, I'm sure many people will disagree with that, even within the world of Trench Crusade, but that is what these guys are betting on, that this is a super important process. It's like a metamorphic process for them, that by enduring this pain, that by feeling all these things, it makes them more suited to the fight against the heretics. And I mean, they might have a bit of a point when it comes to being able to endure the battlefield. We know that all manner of factions need to dose up and drug up their soldiers to keep them in the fight, whereas these guys, they might not even notice the things that are happening to them during a battle because they just live in a constant state of pain, which is quite interesting. So we know that during the Corpse Wars, as the Black Grail was really starting to spread around, these groups of lepers were trying to, escape basically. But at the time, it would have been so hard to really know the difference between what's like a Black Grail infection and what's leprosy. And even then, you might not have wanted to let people who were suffering from leprosy into your town. That might have been a big problem for people. So Prophet Salon, who noticed that he and his people were being stopped and not allowed in, decided to martyr himself. It seems as though, it never says, it seems as though he had such a good connection with his people that they opted to do it with him. The other lepers opted to do it with him. Whether it was just the leaders of the group or all of them, it's not really quite clear. But they obviously wanted some of them to stay outside so that they could uncover and parade their remains, it says, through the town gate several days later to demonstrate the consequences of the town's refusal. So that was a big step from him. And that's why I think the use of the name Salon is so interesting, because he's putting himself out there as the champion of the people. So that doesn't happen. He doesn't die. Instead, they are visited by the Blessed Mary, who washed them and tended to their wounds and told them that what they were enduring was divine, that it was a gift from the Lord himself, that it was designed to give them the strength that they needed to defeat the forces of hell. And that's where it all begins for the procession of the Sacred Affliction. They now not only have something that they need to endure, which is vitally important on this journey, but they also have a reason that they need to endure it, which is even more important. So they are described as overcome by a holy joy, which lets you know the kind of situation that they were now in. They had gone from enduring suffering to preparing, to launching their own war across the world at any heretic that they could find. Now, this is where it gets kind of funny and interesting for me. So they are sent out into the world, right? You're sending a bunch of people suffering from a communicable disease out into the world. What's that going to do? It's going to create more of them. And it's the easiest thing in the world for somebody to be overcome by religious fervor and then to join their ranks in a way by just like exposing themselves to an infection, should that be what they choose to do. It's just, I think, incredibly interesting because we get to this part here. While each procession boasts unique initiation rituals, all honor the rites of pure Tazeret. Now that's spelt a little differently, but I'm assuming the reference there is the Hebrew word, which is often translated as leprosy. It's used in the Bible basically to describe various ritually impure, disfigurative conditions of the human skin. And there was an entire, as is often the case in ancient times, I don't know what the modern view of like the older days is, but they often have very, very strict and informed attempts to try and spread or try and cease the spread of potentially virulent and very, very troublesome diseases. So basically there's laws of Tazeret which are given in depth in 13 to 14 Leviticus in the Bible, and there's several other stories that talk about them, and there's ways to behave and things to do and things to watch for and precautions to take depending on the symptoms that people are showing to prevent the spread of this disease. Now, in the Trench Crusade universe, being the Trench Crusade universe, everything gets completely flipped on its head, and it becomes not about preventing the disease, but rather about the acceptance of the disease and essentially a way to spread the disease. So in the Trench Crusade world, the rites are about confessing your sins and ingraining yourself and burrowing deep into the community and the social aspect and the culture of this new pilgrim procession. So you got to give it up, basically. You got to give it all up. You got to give all your sins up to the castigators. And once that's done, they then walk through all the rest of the procession, and all the procession reaches out and touches them and welcomes them. So you've got this kind of, yes, it is nice in a way to do it, but it's also very culty, and it's also once again helping to spread around whatever anybody has is going everywhere. And once everyone in the procession has welcomed the aspirant, do they then get their millstone, which is like tied to them, because it's not hard enough to be a leper, right? Having this terrible disease and affliction and dealing with that over time isn't hard enough. They also need to endure the weight of the millstone, which is quite literally representative of their sins. So a super interesting group of people who it seems can never suffer enough. Once they have this idea, this concept in their mind that suffering is akin to what God wants them to do, they really go all out to do it. It must be bad enough to walk around being that ill, that sick, having that issue with your body, but then doing so under the weight of the millstone and also in battle would be incredible. So yeah, just like super fun, interesting lore that I thoroughly enjoyed. I always like the little twists that Trench Crusade will often put on stuff. They'll take something and just invert it a little bit. Like in this case, it's how people would have tried to treat and deal with the spread of leprosy historically, which was to limit it, and now it turns into this thing that they're actively attempting to spread around. Not necessarily in a malicious way. It's not like they're jumping in the drinking water or washing their ass or anything like that, but they are definitively not taking that level of care of isolation and things of that nature to try and stop the spread. So yeah, just I thought very interesting and fun lore. So that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, but only if you actually did like the video. If you're new to the channel, feel free to subscribe. Should you wish to click any of the links in the description below, then do. There's probably something down there that you might like. But that's it. I've got some really funky shit that I've been working on and that I've been drafting in people to help me with, super talented people that I never thought I would get to work with in my entire life. And I'm really looking forward to showing you what we are doing and where all this is going over the coming months. So stay tuned.